awareness thinking exercise, which is part of the discovery you're talking about. That's where people are able to figure out how to get what they want. So Nelson Nash makes the statement all the time that if people really understood what was happening, they would know what to do. We've kind of built on top of that statement to say if people really understand what's going on in their personal financial economy, then with capable professional help, they'll know what to do. Because of these thinking exercises we do with people, we've noticed that time after time when we're visiting with people, they're having 30, 40, 50% of their gross revenue is flowing to the government for various taxes or flowing to government-created tax shelters. So all that money is gone. Then the remaining dollars that are flowing into their checking accounts, we're finding that 30, 40, 50% of that money is flowing to the commercial banks. So a real challenge that people have today, in our opinion, is they just don't have any control of money. And so when opportunities arise or when problems occur, they're kind of at the mercy of the banks. Because they may have significant money sitting in the walls of their home or sitting in 401ks or 403bs, but there's just not very much, if any, readily available money. So the bottom line goal, I guess you would say, in this movement is to help people understand that that they're losing control, and when they lose control, then it makes them make decisions that are not in their best interest.
So we're asking people to be open to thinking differently.
Absolutely. And
there's a saying that I heard you use recently.
I'm going to ask you to bring forward for our listeners today, because as you were talking, what was running through my mind is that before people actually take the step, take the action of going to the bank and making that deposit, or paying whatever they're paying in taxes, there's a thinking in place about things that maybe just aren't so.
That's true. As an example, and Tom, you and I were talking about the author Peter Thiel, who created PayPal, and he's been involved in a number of startups, and he's written a book, 0 to 1. And in that book, he likes to ask people, what are there any important truths that you know that very few people agree with you on? And so some of the truths that we feel like we've learned by countless meetings with the public are people are led to believe that they should own their own home. But the truth is that the least efficient way to own a home is to pay cash for it. People are led to believe that they should contribute to a government-created 401k or 403b or IRA to save taxes. But the truth is that more often than not, that causes more taxes to the contributor and or to the next generations. So there are a number of myths in the financial world, in our opinion, that have been promoted by financial institutions, in some cases by us financial professionals, just because we haven't thought it through, because we didn't really know any better. But I mean, we're part of the problem, we financial people, in that we're basically communicating to the public and suggesting that they do things that just really don't make mathematical sense. And most of what we're communicating is causing people to give up control of their money, and that's what really causes some significant problems for the individual family.
So, Mark, would you say
that for yourself, both personally and professionally, this has been an evolution, a learning that has unfolded for you in the recognition of how large a problem this really is?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because what I really want to know is why you specifically are doing this.
Well, again, Tom, I think it's I feel inspired by this concept. It probably originated from reading some of Nelson Nash's material, and then from continuing to meet with thousands of people who are really not enjoying life at the level that they could because there's such a scarcity mindset.
Are you talking about in client meetings?
I'm talking, yes, in client meetings. And so when Nelson made the comment in his book that if people understood what's happening, they'd know what to do, that really resonated with me. And Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, he's the one that brought the Buckminster Fuller quote to us, that if you want to help people think differently, stop trying to teach them rather than give them the tools to figure it out for themselves. Well, that was where the thinking exercises originated. Our cash flow awareness, our financial discovery, our generational conversations, that's where all that came from. Now, we've done these thinking exercises a couple thousand times now. I mean, we've done them a lot. And as we're doing these thinking exercises with people, they're realizing, along as we're realizing, that the cards are stacked against us. And so people are uncomfortable. There's a lot of financial tension in certain homes, across the country. And it doesn't have to be that way. And again, we've had a number of clients say, wow, I never thought about it that way. And Dan Sullivan oftentimes will ask how many people think, and then he says how many people think about their thinking. Well, I'd say, Tom, that we've been doing a lot of thinking about our thinking. And again, if sometimes people say, well, what do you do? Well, we work with teachers in Missouri a lot, and basically what we do is we help teachers keep control of more of their money. We help homeowners keep control or gain more control of their money. And it really changes, it changes their life in that they go from more of an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. They can do so much more for themselves, their family, etc., that they just had no idea was possible. And I'm hopeful that at our next event, we'll continue to build on this, because we'll be able to show specific examples of how just by helping people think differently, they've dramatically changed their life.
Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned the event.
It will take place in St. Louis, November 15th, 16th, and 17th, and we'll provide information throughout this teleseminar as to how to go about registering for the event. If you're just joining us right now, my name is Tom Mickler, and I'm sitting with Mark Benson, who is the founder of Maritime, which is an organization that works with public school teachers in Missouri. And what Maritime does is it advises teachers on their pension. And this organization has been in existence for over 25 years, and not once has anyone from Maritime had to go out and make a call to a client. Clients come Maritime's way because of the service, because of the value that's provided. But there is a mechanism in there, Mark, I think that you discovered, and that brings us back to the topic of today, and it's the high quality client attraction system. Before we delve into that, Mark, can you talk a little bit about what do you mean when you talk about a high quality client?
Well, one of the biggest problems in the industry, Tom, according to surveys, is that most people, most of the failures in our industry occur because people don't have enough of the right kinds of people to see on a consistent basis. And so for us, the first step we took several years ago, and everything we do is really the results of research studies, thinking exercises, et cetera. But we kind of determined that probably the ideal strategy, tough to pull off, but the ideal strategy is to bring in a network of financial people to a natural or focused market, utilize unique ability teamwork. And at the event, we'll break this down a lot more, but there was a Stanford Research Institute study that said that the American people wish they could go to one source for all their financial needs. That's what caused us 20 years ago to create the integrated resource network idea, which simply is almost like a faculty of financial people, tax people, investment people, insurance people, mortgage people, et cetera, all working together to smother the clients with resources and services. Then the natural market or the focus market idea that came about from a thinking exercise that we did at Strategic Coach back in the mid 90s, and that was to simply Dan Sullivan calls it the biggest check thinking exercise, but I simply wrote down the names of the 10 most profitable, most enjoyable client relations that I had, and my wife and I were both former teachers, so this shouldn't have come as a surprise. But 9 of those 10, one or both of in the couple were teachers. So the light went on for me immediately at that moment that's a natural market for me. So when we say a high quality client attraction process, we're saying we think financial professionals, us included, would do well to think about who are the clients that we would enjoy working with the most, that would give us the best chance to not only us be profitable, but we would create tremendous value for them, and so on. And so one of the markets that we've worked with, as you said, for over 20 years is the teacher market here in Missouri. And Tom, just to clarify, we didn't start the first day having teachers call us, but over time we evolved to where we figured out how to get teachers to call us. So we haven't called a teacher in 15, 20 years. They call us because other teacher clients advocate for us. Across the country, again, the norm in many financial practices is that you do advertising, you have billboards, you pay for radio ads, you have radio programs, you have television shows, etc. Well, all of those are examples where you're paying somebody so that you can advertise for yourself to the public. Well, I don't know that the public really grasps that or really appreciates that. So what we did is we flipped it the other way and we said, what if we have somebody else advocate for us? What if we had people who trust us then advocate for us to other people who trust them? And so that's really conceptually the first thing that we did. And then the final part of that strategy I mentioned, again, bringing an integrated network of resources to a natural market, utilizing unique ability teamwork. The importance of the unique ability teamwork is that the public, they would like for their financial people to have a succession plan for them. But the norm in the industry is that a person retires, quits, whatever, gets disabled, then all of their clients kind of become like orphans. In fact, that's a term the industry uses, is you become orphaned. Well, we decided years ago that the public would rather that not happen, so that's where the integrated teamwork comes in. We make this promise to clients. We say, look, our goal is that you will never have a meeting 10 years from now, 50 years from now, where there will be all strange faces at the table, because we have people of all ages here in our organization. And, I'm in the second year at age 62, I'm in the second year of a 25-year vision. But I'm not going to be around forever. And so we have people that we deal with that are in their 30s, and a natural thing for them to ask is, hey, Mark, what happens when you're gone? Well, you're going to be in good shape. You see Robbie here sitting next to me, he's in his 30s. Or you see Kyle sitting over here on this side, he's in his 20s. So that's the ideal strategy, I think, Tom, the underlying strategy. And then by the high quality attraction, we're just saying, it doesn't make sense to make the entire world a prospect. Rather, if we as financial professionals will think for a moment about who are the types of people that we want to go visit with, who do we want to help, that's probably the first thinking exercise to working through the high quality client attraction process.
So,
as I listen to you, one of the things that stands out to me in your success, in your journey, is you were open, willing to think differently.
I think so.
That had to be a key, to be open to a Stanford research project, to what Dan Sullivan was saying, because you'll encounter, as we discussed, a continuum of people in terms of their thinking. and not everybody is on the same page at the same day. So having a connection that person trusts, that you know as well. If you could explain a little bit more of this in detail, Mark, as far as what you actually do in the high quality client attraction system, some of the more specific steps to reach the kind of people you'd like to work with.
Sure. So the first step, Tom, would be that you would want to think about who are the types of people that you want to visit with as a financial professional. Who are the people that you feel like, as Dan Sullivan says, can create value for? He defines value creation as providing direction, increasing confidence, enhancing capability, creating more clarity. So in our example for teachers, my wife and I were both teachers, that was a natural market for me. We have teachers that are married to people that work at a electric co-op. It's called Ameren UE here in the St. Louis area. Well, that's another focus market that we can go in. Now, so the difference between natural and focus. Natural is something that's natural, that I understand their world. I understand the world of a teacher. When they're talking about their day at school and in the classroom, I understand that because I was there. That's natural. So some of our listeners, they may be thinking about natural markets for themselves right now as I'm speaking. You also can go into focus markets, and that is where maybe you have a strong relationship with someone. We have a person in our organization whose wife is the head of a nursing department at a local hospital. So he's thinking through a focus market for him would be employees at this hospital. So that would be a focus market. So Tom, that's the first step that you would want to begin with. Now, if you want to accelerate this a little bit, to any of the listeners, and if you want to join our educational crusade, basically what you're signing up for is you're ready and willing to help people gain more control of their money. And the way you're going to help them gain more control of their money is you're going to help them go through thinking exercises to figure that out. So if somebody here listening happens to have a relationship with a number of truck drivers or a number of construction workers, or you could name a lot of different groups. And if they're looking for a value creation system, I think it would be to help those truck drivers, as an example, discover their own financial picture, discover their own personal economy. If I would just promise you, if you help a focus market group do that, and then if the people you help know that you're really focused on people like them, they will go back and tell their colleagues, hey, you need to talk to these folks over here because they're focused on helping people like us. So Tom, that's probably the first step that our listeners would want to take. Now, again, I can't emphasize enough, we're going to take a block of time at our November event where we're going to be in a room, and I'm going to break this down in its most simplistic fundamentals. I've said this before, I'm confident that I could be dropped off in any city in the country, and you give me 3, 4, 5 weeks, I can have 10 people from a natural or focused market calling and asking for appointments in a matter of a few weeks by following this system. This is something that we've created over the last 20 years, and it works. So I might just continue on with this, Tom, if that's okay. We'll just go into some more of the basic steps. Another step then is that you want to begin building a prospect/results scorecard, we call it. And that's where you begin accumulating names of teachers or names of truck drivers or names of people in the medic field, whatever market you're in. And then where it gets unique or different to what most people do, I feel like that I was taught initially when I got into business that I was supposed to contact people that I knew and tell them that I had something I could come by and help them with. And I think that puts people on a defensive. So I don't call people and suggest to them that I can come and help them. Rather, I flip it and say to my closest relationships, would you help me with a project that I'm working on? Would you help me with something that I'm working on? So as an example, when we built the maritime model, I contacted some of my longest term relations in education, and I knew there were certain things that we knew that we could help teachers with that nobody else really knew to the level that we knew it. We took a lot of time to study front and back everything we could about that, about the teachers, the Missouri Teachers Retirement System. We've been a student of that for 25 years. No one knows that better than we do.
So, Mark, if I can jump in here,
Mm-hmm.
what you were able to understand the needs of that specific group.
Correct, because I was in that group.
Because it was a natural for you. You were able to solve a problem for them.
That's correct. That's correct.
So that I think would be huge.
Yeah, and as we were solving that, Tom, the one thing that we've discovered over the last 31 years is that almost everything that we were solving had to do with cash flow for that teacher and had to do with control of their money. Carlos Lara, a good friend of ours and a person with the Nelson Nash Institute that will also be at the event, a few years ago, he started explaining to me what he does in his professional life, and that's to help businesses with their cash flow. And then I got to thinking about, businesses cash flow, individual cash flow. There's nothing more important than cash flow. There's nothing that people are more concerned about. So there was a time that I thought teachers were calling and asking, hey, I heard you can help us with our retirement, and that's what they were saying. But if you think a layer deeper, what they were really saying is, I've been working the last 20, 25, 30 years, and my cash flow has been okay while I'm working. What I now need for you to do is I need you and your people to help me figure out if my cash flow is going to be okay when I'm not working, when I'm retired. Okay, that's really the question they were asking. Now, the thing that as we do these thinking exercises with people, the cash flow awareness, et cetera, they begin to understand that, they've got so much money coming in and so much money going out. And so when you see on the commercials where they say, one of the companies out there says, what's your number? In other words, what amount of money do you have to accumulate to replace the income that needs to come in? Well, there didn't seem to be much conversation about adjusting what's going out. So what we've learned with our thinking exercises is we're helping people think through, well, if we can make adjustments and have $1,000 a month less flowing to the banks, then we don't have to have $1,000 more a month coming in from one of our assets, okay? And so it's kind of tough to explain it here, Tom, but it's all about the flow of money. And if you go back to what I said at the outset, most people are having 35, 45, 50% of their money is flowing to the government or government-created tax shelters. And, with the government-created tax shelters, that money goes into prison. You can't get to it. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. This is just reality. Then of the remaining dollars that are flowing into their checking accounts, 35, 45, 55% of that is flowing to the banks. Now, most people focus on the interest rates of the loans out there. They don't spend much time thinking about the volume of the loans. An example, a person could have a $100,000 mortgage at this costs them $500 a month. Well, if you take 500 divided by 100 is the number of thousands, that's $5 per thousand. They could have a $10,000 car loan where they're making a $500 a month payment. You take 500 divided by 10,000, that's $50 per thousand. Well, let's say the mortgage is at 5% and the auto loan's at 3%. Most people seem to think, well, let's pay off the higher interest loan, okay? But the truth is, it makes more sense to focus on the volume of the money. Because if you can have less dollars flowing to the bank, you can have more dollars flowing to your pool of money, okay? And so again, I think a lot of the listeners know that we think what Nelson Nash has created as far as the privatized banking pool makes all kinds of sense. There's $12 trillion sitting in the banks today. if we could change that to where half that money was sitting in specially designed life insurance contracts, that would cause trillions of dollars to go tax-free to the next generations. It'd be one of the lifelines we could give our kids and our grandkids to overcome the silliness that's going on. I mean, look at our political world right now. If you saw the last debate, I mean, it's just crazy. And so what we're leaving our kids and our grandkids doesn't look really great right now, but we, with our Freedom Advisor movement, we can educate the public to get less money to flow to the government, less money to flow to the banks, more money to flow to their privatized banking system, which is just going to open up a whole new world of thinking for each family.
I'm going to ask Jimmy Asher to join us in a moment to give us some details about the event in November. But Mark, early on in that discourse right there, what stood out to me was the ability that you had to be able to solve a problem for people. And at the event, I think you said that you'll be able to demonstrate or show case studies, people that have understood where their money was flowing, have redirected it, and what that has meant to them emotionally, if nothing else. And the interesting thing to me, too, is that, okay, you said that a public school teacher might come to you and say they have had this much in terms of income every month. They retire, now they're looking at this. You're talking about cash flow, which then becomes a natural segue into understanding where your cash is flowing to, or it's not flowing to. But the practical thing that you've done, and you've not mentioned it yet, and I'm going to ask you to do so before I throw it to Jenny, is you put a red marker and a green marker in front of people, and they see indisputably with that red marker circling a number, what percentage of their money is flowing out of their control. That doesn't necessarily have to be. And then a green marker that circles what is typically a lot lower amount that is still under their control.
That's right. Yeah, Tom, it's really interesting, again, as you sit and just communicate with people. And so we have clients or prospective clients that come in, and really all we try to do initially, this is just the basic fundamental stuff that we do at the beginning. We do all kinds of stuff later, but the beginning fundamentally is we help people discover their own personal financial economy. And when we do that, we simply help them understand what assets they have that are taxable, what assets they have that are tax deferred, what assets they have that are tax free. We help them understand that we have a progressive tax system, so they understand what their marginal tax bracket is by simply looking at line 43 of their tax return. We help them do a cash flow awareness. That's where they simply figure out what money's ends up in their checking account each month, what money goes for fixed 12-month expenses, what money goes for not fixed 12-month expenses. That's how they determine their surplus in a normal month. And then we help them just simply list all the various loans that they have with banks and what money is flowing to take care of each of those loans. So that I just gave you a summary of a personal financial economy. Then we simply say, okay, let's look at this for a moment. Let's just talk about these different assets. Let's look at this 401k. It has $200,000 in it. Can you get to that money? And of course, the answer is no. And so, all right, let's circle that in red. All right, now you have a home valued at this. You owe that. There's X number of dollars of equity in the walls of your house. Can you get to that today? Answer is no. Well, circle that red. So we have them circle in red whatever they can get to, circle in red what they cannot touch, and circle in green what they can get to. And generally speaking, the money that people can get to is sitting in money market accounts or sitting in the bank. But then we talk about the fact, okay, it's sitting here, you can get to it. What's the rate of return you're getting? Almost nothing. The little bit of return that you do get, how much taxes do you pay on it? Well, when they look at their marginal tax bracket, they see that gets taxed up at the marginal bracket, not down at 10 or 15, but maybe at 25 or 28. And then they realize that once they spend that money, it's gone. So the growth on any of that kind of money is always interrupted. And then we simply talk to them about the fact, now, some of your surplus dollars, some of your assets, you may want those to flow over into your own private banking system. Over here, it's the one place we know of that you can get uninterrupted, tax-free, compound growth and still have access to money, because your dollars here are collateral to get dollars from a different financial institution called the insurance company, as opposed to always having to go to the bank. So it's a really enjoyable process. And again, we have over and over, people will say, wow, this is a totally different way of thinking. And as Dan Sullivan says, I don't know if we're thinking enough, and then I'm sure we're not thinking about our thinking enough. But that's what's causing people to be ecstatic. Now, Tom, when those clients leave, because we're in the natural market, those clients then go back to their schools, or they go back to their place of employment, and they're naturally going to be telling their colleagues about a unique experience that they had, about how someone sat with them and helped them think through their own personal financial economy, and helped them think through ways to have more money flow into their control and less money flowing to the government and the banks. So it's a natural thing that is really exciting.
So sticking with the red and green marker, one more minute here. Is it fair to say, when you look at that number, that people are led, indirectly maybe, but led into the creation of their own problems?
Oh, very much so.
Okay, so they are the ones who can solve the problem then themselves as well, too.
Because we have people that have, we wrote a book, small book for teachers in Missouri, and we took a specific example. The couple we met with, and we tell the whole story in a section of the book, but the couple we were dealing with, their net worth was between $1.5 and $2 million. But they could get to $1,000 of those assets. Now, they were doing everything that they're taught. They changed to a 15-year mortgage. They're pumping tons of money into 401ks. They're pumping tons of money into the defined benefit pension, pumping money into a 403b. And they just had one daughter got married, another daughter's getting married. One just got out of college, the other was just getting out of college. And they were doing everything that they're told to do, except they had all green circles on their financial discovery. Red circles. They had, because they had just paid for a wedding, they had about $1,000 that they had the ability to get to. They'd had an air conditioner go out. They needed $4,000, $4,500. No money's available. So now they go back to the bank, and the bank's charging them a pretty significant interest rate. It just doesn't make any sense. And so we're just hopeful that we can build a community of financial people who will expand what they do just a little. There's a lot of wonderful, well-meaning financial people out there that are doing great work. We're just asking if they would expand what they do into helping people do these financial discovery thinking exercises, because it will just lead to all sorts of wonderful strategic conversations.
Jenny Dasher here in just a second. We come back, Mark. I want to follow up a little bit more on this notion of you're solving a problem for the client. And is that typical thinking in the industry, or what is the typical thinking when engaging with a client? But right now, let me throw it over to Jenny, who can give us some information as far as the November event, the Freedom Advisors Crusade experience as well, and then any other points that Jenny wants us to be aware of. Jenny.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I just want to give you a few little pieces of information, and we'll probably add them over here in the chat bar as I'm speaking. But first of all, the Freedom Advisor Live event that Mark and Tom have been referencing is November 15th to the 17th here in St. Louis. You can get information about that at www.freedomadvisorcrusade.com. A couple people have been asking us the cost for the event. Right now, that is on sale for $1,097 for 3 days. However, if you are an IBC practitioner, if you are an E3 affiliate, which those of you who are know who you are, and also if you're an NNI affiliate, there are some codes within the secure portals that you guys access that will even bring that cost down further. So check those out. I'm also going to give you my cell phone number because as you might know, I take care of some of these details. So my cell phone number, if anybody has questions, and I can direct you to any of these guys here, is 314-800-8511. I'll have Drew add that to the chat section. So 314-800-8511. That's me, Jenny Dasher. Also, you can email any questions you have to info@freedomadvisorcrusade.com. I wanted to also, Mark and Tom, if you guys could touch on a question that somebody has for us. John is asking a little bit, Mark, 2 questions. The first one is he's talking about how in Missouri, the teachers are required to send money to the pension system. So he's kind of wondering how you can reroute those dollars. I know it's not the same in every state, but Mark, if you could maybe just touch on how teachers can control more money by not sending unnecessary dollars out of their control. If you could just touch on that a little bit, rerouting dollars so they don't send too much out of their control, maybe some of those strategies. And then second, somebody mentioned they were kind of wanting to hear how to get more people to call them. And I think maybe we got off that topic a little bit. So if you could just go back to that for a minute, Mark, and just kind of restate that.
Sure. Let me take the second part.
Okay.
The way we get people to call us, and again, it's very difficult to do this justice on this seminar. We'll take several hours in a segment to really cover this when we get together. So if you can think about this, for us at Ameritime, we were able to learn things about the Missouri teachers' retirement system that most teachers didn't understand, okay? And then we also know how to help teachers think through the flow of their money. We know how to help them discover where their money's going and then help them strategize so more of it flows into their control. So Jenny, what we would do, what we still do today, is we'll call educators whom we have very close relationships with, and we'll simply ask them if they would be willing to help us with something we're working on. What we're working on is we think we have some significantly helpful information for teachers, and the person we're calling is an influential teacher. So when we go simply explain to them how we do what we do, within the first 5 minutes, they're asking us questions about their situation. And they'll say things like, well, Mark, you think I should go do this? And then my answer is, John, it depends. What's it depend on? Well, it depends on your personal financial economy. So before I can answer the question, you need to tell me a little bit. We need to go through a little thinking exercise. So Jenny, I hope that makes sense. That's a way that we invariably, when you go talk to a center of influence, because you're wanting them to tell their colleagues about information you can present to the colleagues. That's the same kind of information that they should have. They just didn't know that it was available. They didn't even know it even existed. So I hope that kind of answers that, Jenny.
Well, I think it does. It probably helps Mark, and I think that you're going to go into a lot more detail, like the whole afternoon on that.
Right.
At our event. And sometimes it's hard for those of you that are watching and want more. Sometimes it's hard to grasp what Mark's saying in just a short time. But
Jenny, let me shift gears for a moment. We have another focused market that we've just started working on in the last few months, and that is with homeowners. And we make the statement to homeowners that, again, like I said earlier, homeowners think a lot of people feel like it makes the most sense to own your home. But the truth is that paying cash for your home is not the most efficient way to be in a home. So and Todd Langford at Truth Concepts has helped us prove that. Now, what we will say to homeowners is we have clients that they get tax-free dividend checks from their privatized banking system, from their specially designed life insurance contracts that are large enough to make their house payment for the next 12 months. So we actually have clients now. We'll show this at the event, but we have clients that will have a tax-free dividend sent to them. They'll store that tax-free dividend over in a separate checking account, and that checking account will make their house payment for the next 12 months. So what they've basically done is they've figured out how to continue to maximize the tax deduction on their home, but they've now been able to stop making their house payment out of their monthly cash flow. To us, that's a strategy that we've always talked about it, but we're not so sure people have understood it. And now we have more families understanding it because we now can show actual examples of people who have done it. And so now when we see Jenny, I can call a person that I know and trust today and go from the teacher market to go to the homeowner market. And I can say, John, good friend of mine, John, could I stop by sometime? There's information that I feel like we have that would really benefit homeowners. But John, we don't want to talk to just any homeowner. We want to talk to homeowners who would really appreciate receiving this type of information. Now, and Jenny, just the past few weeks, I've been personally doing this. And when I go do this with a close, trusted relationship of mine, they immediately start asking questions for themselves about, well, can I do this? And of course, the answer is yes. So now we're gonna help John in that example, and John's also going to tell 2 or 3 more of his closest relationships who own homes, hey, you ought to talk to these guys because they know how to show people how to stop making their house payments several years earlier than planned out of their monthly cash flow and still get the maximum tax deduction. We have a client that just received a $30,000+ dividend from their privatized banking because they bought into the idea years ago of getting as much money to flow to their privatized system as possible, and that's by strategizing to send less to the government and less to the banks. And then when that occurred, that's now occurred, that client is still getting about a $22,000 tax deduction on their tax return because the house isn't paid for, the mortgage payment is just stopped. So Jenny, I hope I'm answering the question. That's an example of something that we'll be explaining at the event, and that's something that financial people all across the country could do. And maybe by me explaining that ties in what we're saying. Any financial professional who's willing and ready to join our crusade, our educational crusade, basically what we're hoping they will do is they'll be willing. There's a lot of well-meaning financial people out there, Tom, that bring a lot of value to their clients, and they help their clients in a lot of ways. We're just suggesting they can go farther than they're going. They'll go further. And one of the ways they'll do it is they'll become even more intent on helping people do their own personal financial discovery. They'll expand to adding that to what they're doing. Their clients will benefit a great deal. It'll separate, if it's an investment guy, if it's a tax person, it'll separate them from other investment people and other tax people, we think, and it will also multiply the investment guy or the tax guy's revenue. So I hope you can tell by the tone of my voice, we're really excited about this. Now what we got to do to get this, to build the 10%, to get 10% of the people in this country to truly understand, thinking about controlling more money makes sense. Getting less money flowing to the government, less money flowing to the banks makes sense. If we could get 10% of the public to really get this, that would be enough to change public opinion, which could be enough to change monetary policy in this country. It would be a grassroots effort that could change the world. It'd be phenomenal.
Jenny, was there another part to that question? Was there the first part of that question as far as?
Well, the other part,
Missouri, at least in this case, Missouri.
yes, Tom. I think the question was, and I know we're going to talk about this at the event also, Mark, But I think the question was, if an employee or a teacher, let's just say, is forced to send money to the pension or to a 401k or whatever, how do you help teach them what is a basic strategy that you might do to teach them to not send more than they have to?
That's right. Okay. So again, Jenny, you're right. Easier to explain in a live seminars versus the medium we're using here. But in the state of Missouri, teachers are basically sending 16 to 17% of their gross revenue is going to the defined benefit pension plan of the state. And then the districts, out of the same pool of money that pays salaries, are matching that. So most teachers in Missouri are having the equivalence of about a third of their gross revenue is flowing to the state retirement system. That's a law. So what we simply try to do, Jenny, is help them understand, hey, you're already taking care of the retirement need. I mean, you're going way over and taking care of the retirement need. So that's done. Now let's do things that will further enhance that retirement. And let's really pay attention about not sending more dollars into tax shelters. Let's really pay attention about let's try to get less dollars to flow to the banks, and let's get more money to flow into your own privatized banking pool. I hope that kind of answers it, Jenny.
Okay. Well, if not, you'll let us know.
Yeah.
Mark, 2 points that I'd like to cover before we come back to what you brought forward in terms of being able to solve problems within the natural market that you're working in because you understand those problems. And how does that compare and contrast with the industry in general? Before we get to that piece, though, when you were talking about the idea of paying off a mortgage as fast as you can or paying cash for your house, that your home being the best investment you'll ever make. These are things that I heard growing up. And yet they were completely out of context. They were just sayings that stuck with me. And my experience also is if I've ever taken any time to spend a few minutes, say, watching a television show of the well-known national experts, they'll support this same idea. And they'll say it with such conviction that I feel like, well, who would I be to challenge that? But that is so critical. Because again, the force of how things are told to us, I think impacts our willingness to think differently. And I think a lot of us shy away from that because, well, we don't want to be wrong. But these things that we're told are not told to us in context of the larger financial picture. Agree?
Right. I think what you just said at the end there, Tom, is we take one financial concept out of context of the whole financial picture, and that sort of doesn't make any sense. We need to look at the entire financial picture and strategize about the entire thing, and that's not normal in our view. In the financial services industry, everybody's kind of on their own island. The tax guys do what they do, the investment guys do what they do, the insurance guys do what they do, the real estate people do what they do, the mortgage people. Everybody kind of deals with just one part of the financial picture, and that's a problem. So when what you've heard people say about paying off the home, now some people, emotions still cause some people to want to pay their home off. And if that's the case, that's great. We're not saying don't pay your house off. We're not saying that if you paid it off that that's a wrong thing. But what we are saying, it's worthy of thinking about. So when people pay principal on a home, they're basically putting money in an asset. They get a 0 rate of return, and the money is no longer able to be used without going back and restructuring a mortgage, refinancing, et cetera. I mean, that's just a mathematical fact. So what we're saying is instead of building equity in that asset, would it make more sense to build equity in this asset? And so what we're helping homeowners do is they're building tax-free equity in their own privatized banking system and their specially designed life insurance contracts. And over time, that asset will create enough of a tax-free dividend to make the house payment. So it's just that it's like the world is flat type of a thing. And then we find out later it's round. Okay. So those are some of the myths that I think we can help people deal with, but we don't need to teach them these things. We need to give them the tools so they can figure it out for themselves. And that's really one of the key things that we've learned over the last few years.
So while you might be working in a natural market and have some ideas as far as the challenges faced by that market, at the same time, when you sit down with a client, you don't necessarily know what problem of theirs that you have to solve initially coming into it until you get into that financial discovery.
Correct. Now, because we're in natural markets, when we get into natural markets or focused markets, we know we a lot of times know some problems that they haven't even discovered yet. Okay, so like every teacher in Missouri who's married, when they ultimately retire, they're going to have to make a decision as to which survivor option they're going to take. Every teacher in Missouri has to make a decision whether or not they're going to add whether they're going to purchase more years of credit. So because we've been students of their retirement system at a high level, we know some of the future problems that they don't even know yet. And sometimes if we can explain those future decisions it's like anything. If you have to make a decision next week on something, and this is the first day you learned about it, that's not as good of a decision-making opportunity as if you had known 10 years earlier. So we have teachers that they know today they're going to retire 10, 15, 20 years from now, but they already have kind of an idea how they're going to strategize through some of those decisions going to be made many years down the road.
Okay. Have a question from Ed from Houston. What else will be discussed at the event? Along with the high-quality client attraction system, what other things will be covered at the event?
You want to answer that, Jenny, or should I? There's going to be the high-quality client attraction process. We use what we call unique ability teamwork, Tom. So I was a high school football coach. In fact, I was a head football coach. So we had defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, et cetera. And so in this system, there's a 5-step process. The step that I'm responsible for, my area of expertise, is the high quality attraction process. John Moriarty is going to be there. He can explain this a lot better than I, and he's explained this in other teleseminars. But John works with a lot of clients and helps them work with investment alternatives. And so John's going to be working with that. There's going to be some of the resources. The Nelson Nash Institute will be there. We're going to have some of our resources, like our attorneys, our tax people. They're going to be there covering certain areas that they are experts on. And so I hope I'm doing at least a somewhat adequate job of explaining this. Todd Langford with Truth Concepts. Kim Butler will be there. And Jenny, anything else to add?
Yes. I'm multitasking here, you guys. I'm going to ask Drew to post the agenda so you can check it out for the event. Some of those times are subject to change a little bit, but in general, you'll be able to get a really good idea of who's going to be there and what we're going to be covering. Just in a nutshell, Mark did talk a little bit about the fact that we're going to have Todd Langford there. We're also going to have Nelson Nash and Carlos Lara and Bob Murphy. One of the days we're going to have breakout sessions with John Murray and Bruce are going to be leading a session about the past, the present, and kind of the future of the economy and mindsets. And at that same time, Mark and Robbie are going to be doing a breakout session that's really going to dig deep into this high-quality client attraction process. So for those of you that were kind of asking for a little bit more, that's when you'll get it. We're also going to do some work on the financial discovery that we've talked about. We're also going to do a lot on the mindset scorecard that we talked about last week and about the mastermind groups. So again, I'm going to have Drew post this. I sent it to him. I don't know if he'll get it on today's call. If not, check out the website. We'll make sure that you can You can access it there to see if it's something you want to jump into. One more thing we're also going to be talking about, I just noticed, real estate and life insurance, how to build real wealth. That's going to be with John Moriarty and a guest, Jimmy Vreeland. Some of you guys may know Jimmy. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Hope I didn't go too fast, but again, you'll be able to access that. And again, call with any questions.
So in summary for today, we're talking about the high quality client attraction system, and we're talking about the importance of deciding, what might be a natural market or a focus market, and then some of your closest relationships within those markets that can help you get to the type of person that you'd like to work with. And I think what I'd like to underscore is the importance of that, building on that relationship or building on those relationships that you have with those that are close to you to help you in that regard, because we're swimming upstream in some ways as far as how people think about money generally in the country. So when you have that trusted party involved that is going to refer you to the people with whom they have trust, that they think will be open to hearing this message, this is how this process actually unfolds and works. And again, we're very well aware that we are swimming upstream in terms of how people have thought about money and advisors as well too. So Mark, would you add anything else as far as a summary for today's call before we sign off?
Well, maybe again, more of an overview, Tom. After thousands and thousands of meetings with clients and years of being in this business, I'm sure there's just lots of years of experience of the listeners that are sitting in on this today. And I think our feeling is that we as financial professionals need to step up. And what the industry probably has lacked how we could make a big difference is to provide better education, better teamwork, and to maybe stop advising or giving opinions unless we understand the full financial picture. So in those three areas, which is really at the core of what we're about, I think, is the way we feel like we're going to provide better education is not the conventional way of teaching. Rather, it's going to be helping people with their own thinking exercises. The way we're going to create better teamwork is to build integrated resource networks across the country. And then the way we're really going to help people understand their personal economy is by simply helping them go through the financial discovery exercise. And Tom, I don't know if maybe this is important, but some of our guys here do that one way, others do it a different way. Some of our listeners probably already do that in a very effective way. Some of them maybe don't do it as effectively as they'd like. So this is really a collaboration of financial people from across the country to try to change an industry for the better.
I want to thank our listeners for taking the time to join us today. Also, I want to let you know that our next teleseminar will be October 27th at 10 a.m. In that teleseminar, we will be discussing generational planning, which will be another value-added creation that we bring forward at the November event. The steps to creating a wealth system within the generations to follow, again, all based on control of the money. So Mark, thank you very much for all your insight and wisdom today. And again, thanks everyone. Hope you have a great day, and we hope that you'll join us on October 27th, as well as coming to St. Louis November 15th, 16th, and 17th. We'll see you.
Bye.